Elena Voss had never been invited to anything in her life, so when the silver envelope arrived at her door on a Tuesday morning, she almost did not open it. It was addressed to her in careful handwriting, not printed, not typed, but written by hand, as though whoever sent it had taken real time with her name. She stood in the hallway of her small apartment, still in her work clothes from the night before, and turned the envelope over twice before finally sliding her finger beneath the seal. Inside was a single card. It said only, "Your presence is required at the Silver Crescent Estate, tonight. You will be compensated. Come prepared to work." There was no name, no explanation, just an address printed at the bottom, and a small symbol pressed into the corner of the card, a crescent moon with a crown above it. Elena knew that symbol. Every healer in the region knew it. She pressed the card against her chest and closed her eyes for one long moment. Then she started packing her medical kit. She had been a healer for 6 years. She had learned the craft from her mother, who had learned it from her mother before her. The women in Elena's family had always carried this gift, the ability to sense illness inside a body, to feel where energy had gone wrong, and to slowly, carefully, guide it back into balance. It was not magic in the dramatic sense. It was quiet work, humble work, the kind that left her exhausted and invisible at the end of every night. Her mother had served the wolf packs for decades before a political disagreement caused her name to be struck from every official list. Elena had grown up with that shadow over her family, the whispers, the looks, the quiet way doors closed when she walked into a room. She had learned to move through the world without asking for much, because asking had never led anywhere good. She had half-human blood, which made things more complicated. Wolf packs were proud communities with long traditions, and while no one was openly cruel to her face, she always felt the distance. She was tolerated. She was useful. She was never truly welcomed, but she was good at her work. That had always been enough. She arrived at the Silver Crescent Estate just after 9 in the evening. The building was enormous, stone walls lit from below by golden lights, tall iron gates standing open, as though they had been expecting her. A young man in a dark jacket met her at the entrance and walked her through the main hall without a word, past rooms full of people in formal clothing, past a staircase wide enough for 6 people to climb side by side, and down a corridor that grew quieter with every step. At the end of it, he stopped outside a heavy wooden door and turned to face her. "The king is inside," he said simply. "He has been given something. We do not know what exactly. 3 healers have already tried. He is running out of time." Elena looked at the door. How long? An hour, maybe less. She nodded and walked in. The room was large but felt small because of the number of people crowded inside it. Advisors, guards, a woman in a long dark coat who looked like she had been crying. They all turned to look at Elena when she entered, and she felt the familiar weight of their judgment. Who is this girl? Why is she here? Is this really the best option left? She ignored all of it and looked toward the bed. King Damon Ashford was lying very still. He was a large man, broad shoulders, strong hands that were now limp at his sides. But in that moment, he looked fragile, in a way that must have been deeply unfamiliar to everyone who knew him. His skin was pale and damp, his breathing was shallow and uneven. A faint dark color was spreading along the veins of his neck, barely visible but unmistakable to someone who knew what to look for. Elena crossed the room and knelt beside him. She did not ask permission. She did not wait to be introduced or acknowledged. She simply set her bag down, pressed both hands flat against his chest, and closed her eyes. What she felt made her breath catch. It was not an illness. It was not a natural poison. It was something old and deliberate. A darkness woven into his bloodstream, like thread pulled through fabric, tightening slowly, closing around every vital system in his body, with patient, terrible precision. She had never felt anything like it in all her years of work. It did not respond to her energy the way most things did. When she pushed against it, it pushed back. She worked for several minutes without moving, without speaking. The room was completely silent, except for the sound of his unsteady breathing. She tried every technique she knew. She shifted her approach 4 times. She pushed more of herself into the connection than she had ever risked before, feeling the drain start behind her eyes, The familiar early warning that she was giving too much. She kept going anyway. It was not enough. She could feel the darkness gaining ground. She could feel him slipping. Not dramatically, not with any great noise, but quietly, the way a fire goes out when the last of the wood is gone. She did not know what happened next. She could not have explained it, not then and not later. Not in any satisfying way that would make sense to someone else. She only knew that something shifted inside her, something deep and wordless and completely beyond her control, and her hands moved on their own. They moved from his chest to his face, and she leaned forward without thinking, and she pressed her lips to his. The room erupted. Not with sound, with light. It came from the point of contact between them, and spread outward in a wave, golden and fierce, filling the room so completely that everyone inside stumbled backward. Elena heard people gasp. She heard something that might have been furniture scraping against the floor. She heard someone say a word in a language she did not recognize. She felt it travel through her like electricity, like water, like heat. All three things at once, and she felt the darkness in him shatter. Not weaken, not recede. Shatter, like something brittle struck very hard, breaking into nothing, leaving only clean air where it had been. She pulled back and opened her eyes. His color had returned. His breathing had steadied. The dark marks on his neck were gone, as completely as though they had never been there. Then his eyes opened. They were gold. She had heard about this, the way an alpha's eyes could shift color in moments of great feeling, but seeing it was something different from hearing about it. His gaze found her immediately, without searching, as though he had known exactly where she would be, even before he was fully awake. Elena sat back on her heels and tried to collect herself. Her hands were trembling. Her head was aching from the effort of what she had done. She felt emptied out, scraped clean, the way she always felt after especially hard work, but amplified into something she had never experienced before. The man standing near the wall, Marcus, she would later learn, the king's most trusted beta, had both hands pressed flat against his face. Two of the elder wolves near the door had gone to their knees. The woman in the dark coat was openly weeping now, though Elena could not tell if it was from relief or from something else entirely. Damon Ashford sat up slowly. He looked at his own hands. He looked at the room. He looked at Elena. He did not say anything, neither did she, but something passed between them in that silence that was louder than anything that had happened in the past hour, and every person in the room felt it. By morning, the entire estate knew. By the following evening, every pack in the region knew. The sacred mate bond, an ancient and extraordinarily rare connection between two wolves, or in rare cases between a wolf and someone who carried even a small amount of wolf blood, had ignited between their king and the half-human healer girl with no rank and a disgraced family name. The reaction was not kind. Elena heard the whispers before she even left the guest room she had been given for the night. She heard words like mistake and impossible, and what was he thinking? Which was ironic, because he had not been thinking at all. He had been unconscious. She heard the names of three noble women who had apparently been considered candidates for the role of queen, and she heard the barely concealed outrage from people who felt that an arrangement made through politics and careful planning had just been rendered meaningless by something entirely outside anyone's control. She packed her bag on the second morning. She walked to the front gate and stood there, looking at the road, trying to decide if she was making the right decision or the easy one. She heard his footsteps before she turned around. He was fully recovered, standing straight, dressed in plain dark clothing that somehow still managed to look formal on him, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "You are leaving," he said. It was not a question. "I was not supposed to be here beyond last night," she said. "I came to do a job. The job is done. You know it is not that simple." "I know what everyone is saying," she told him, because she had decided early in her life that pretending not to see a problem did not make it disappear. "I know what your council thinks. I know I am not what anyone planned." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I did not plan any of this either, but I have learned that some things do not ask for permission before they become true." She looked at him for a long moment. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing that you are not willing to give," he said. "But I am asking you not to leave without at least speaking with me first. Not as a king asking a subject. as one person asking another. She thought about this, then she picked up her bag and turned back toward the estate. "One conversation," she said. "That is all I am asking for," he said, and followed her inside. The conversation lasted 4 hours. They sat in a small room off the main library, with tea that went cold between them while they talked. She told him about her mother, about growing up between two worlds and belonging fully to neither, about the particular loneliness of being useful to people who did not truly see you. He listened in a way that felt rare, without interrupting, without redirecting, with his full attention fixed on her as though what she was saying was the most important thing he had heard in some time. He told her things too, about the weight of a crown that had been placed on his head when he was 19, and still afraid, but had never been allowed to show it. About the decade he had spent making every decision based on duty and strategy and the good of the Pax, slowly losing track of what he himself actually wanted. About the strange feeling he had carried since the moment he opened his eyes in that room, a feeling of something locked, clicking open, something that had been closed for a very long time. They disagreed about several things. She was not gentle about it. She told him when she thought he was wrong, and he sat with her disagreement instead of dismissing it, which surprised her more than almost anything else that had happened. She did not trust the bond at first. She needed to say that plainly, and she did. "I am not going to let a feeling, however powerful, make decisions for me," she told him. "I have spent my whole life watching people get carried away by forces they did not choose. I need to choose this, if I choose it at all." He nodded. "I would not want it any other way." The weeks that followed were difficult. The political pressure on Damon was enormous. His counsel brought him arguments every morning, and proposals every afternoon, all of them pointing in the same direction, that this bond, however real, was inconvenient, and that inconvenient things could sometimes be managed. He rejected every one of these conversations without raising his voice, which, his beta told Elena quietly, was actually far more frightening than if he had shouted. Elena faced pressure of her own kind. People who had previously ignored her now had opinions about her. Letters arrived, some warm, some not. A journalist published something unkind. One of the noble she-wolves said something in a public setting that was technically polite and deeply cutting at the same time. Elena wrote back to the warm letters and ignored everything else. She had learned long ago that not every voice deserved a response. She and Damon found their way to each other slowly, honestly, without rushing. Late evenings in the library, long walks along the tree line at the edge of the estate where the forest started, and the noise of everything else faded. Conversations that started about practical matters and ended somewhere neither of them had expected. Arguments that were sometimes sharp and always resolved. Silences that were, more and more often, comfortable. She watched him make decisions, watched the care he took, the weight he carried, the way he put the well-being of his people above his own comfort, with such consistency that it had simply become who he was. She found herself respecting him before she was fully ready to admit it. He watched her work, watched the quiet intensity she brought to healing, the way she spoke to frightened people, the steadiness she maintained when everything around her was uncertain. He told her once, in the plainest words, that she was the bravest person he had met in 10 years of knowing many brave people. She told him he was being dramatic. He said he was being accurate. 3 weeks after the night that had changed everything, Elena stood in the great hall of the Silver Crescent estate and formally accepted the mate bond in front of every elder, every advisor, and every wolf who had ever underestimated her. She had rehearsed nothing. When it was her turn to speak, she said only, "I am not here because I had to be. I am here because I looked clearly at everything in front of me and decided that this was right. That is the only reason that has ever mattered to me." The room was very quiet after she said it. Then Damon reached out and took her hand, and the quiet turned into something warmer. Years later, when people met them for the first time, they often remarked on the way the two of them communicated without speaking, the small look exchanged across a crowded room, the way one would finish a thought the other had started, the effortless, unhurried ease between them that could not be taught or performed. People who asked Elena how she had known what to do that night, how she had made that unexplainable decision in that room, always received the same answer. She would think about it for a moment, genuinely, as though she was still working it out. Then she would say, "I did not know. I just knew it was him. And every time she said it, Damon, sitting beside her without fail, would say nothing at all. Because some things do not need to be added to. They are simply true.